Let the drummer kick, let the drummer kick die. Let the drummer kick, let the drummer kick die. Let the drummer kick, let the drummer kick die. Let the drummer kick, let the drummer kick die. Let the drummer kick.
Good evening. The unthinkable has happened in the pristine waters of Prince William Sound.
The Exxon Valdez tanker spilled over 10 million gallons of crude oil into the Prince William Sound, an area abundant in wildlife and beauty. Today, the spill is considered one of the worst in United States history. Right after the spill, a storm hit the area, causing the oil to spread, eventually covering 9,000 miles of shoreline. But the Exxon Valdez disaster was more than just an oil spill. Alaskans should have seen the spill coming. Exxon Valdez was not the first oil spill of its kind, nor was the spill a recent phenomenon. In fact, there had been 5 major oil spills around the world prior to it, the first of which occurred over 20 years before Exxon Valdez. Alaskans were oblivious to the fact that a disaster could ever happen to them, even though the port of Valdez is the only major port for loading crude oil in the U.S. Former Alaska Governor Steve Cowper admits that Exxon Valdez was an accident waiting to happen. Cowper went on to say that the wreck of Exxon Valdez was not an isolated freak occurrence, but simply one possible and disastrous result of policies, habits, and practices. These policies and habits were spewed by complacency, says Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski.
The National Transportation Safety Board investigated the accident and determined the probable causes for the accident. And while it determined that it was primarily caused by human error of the captain and the crew, it's my belief it's also because we had become complacent. It had been 12 years since we'd begun to tanker oil out of Valdez and there hadn't been an incident. However, when the spill occurred, we became acutely aware of how woefully unprepared we were. The few prevention measures that were available were inadequate, and the spill response and cleanup resources were seriously deficient.
At the time, there was no requirement for double-hull tankers, which have 2 shells to ensure the oil stays inside. A U.S. Coast Guard study found that had the Exxon Valdez been equipped with a double hull, as much as 60% of the spilled oil might have stayed within the ship. There were also no support vessels, only 1 tug escort, and limited ship tracking. In response to the spill, Congress passed the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, which required improvements in emergency response preparedness, a phase-in of double-hulled tankers by 2015, and various other safety requirements.
It's not a silly little.
The wildlife lost in the Exxon Valdez disaster will never be replaced, and the spill's effects will live on in Alaska forever.
This love that we've been working on can't seem to hold you like I want to, so I can feel you in my arms. Nobody's gonna come and save you. We built too many false alarms. We're going down, and you can see it.